with this good-looking man, Campbell Hastie of Hastie Mortgages, and we're talking anything to do with home loans. How are you today, Campbell?
I'm good. I'm good. I
How's
can't
your week
wait to
been?
talk about the exciting topic of home loans.
Well, we're actually going to talk about deposits. We're going to talk about deposits and the exciting thing that we all save up to have that 20% deposit in this current market. And we will talk about that. If you have any questions for Campbell, you are a first home buyer or you are someone who is in need of getting some cash, there is a comment section below this video. And please fire away and ask him a question. He would love to come back and help you. You said at the start, but off air, you said you've been saying no to people. What have you been saying no about?
I have, yeah. Look, because interest rates have done what they've done in the last 6 months or so, gone up. People have been struggling to get their heads around what that means from an affordability perspective. The couple I was dealing with last week, they're a great example of the issue here. One of them's recently finished maternity leave, so there's more income coming back into the household. They'd like to borrow a bit more so they can upgrade to a new house. All good things. But I've had to say to them, you can't have any more than what you've already got, mortgage-wise, right? And they say to me, why is that? Something's wrong there. We've got more income. It's because the test rate that the banks test you on has gone up. It was 5 point something percent. Now it's closer to 8, and that just squeezes you. So on that basis, I've been saying no to a few people this week. That has been, the word of the week. No, you can't do that. You have to stay put. Thursday particularly was really depressing because it was 4 of those in a row. Jesus, man. Anyway, that's the life and times.
Let's say yes today. Yes. You can. Yes, you can have the money. Yes, you can. But let's start with first question. Do I need to have 20%? Can I get away with it?
You can get away with less, but it's tough, right? It's tough. And to really understand why it's tough, you have to get your head around the LVR restrictions and how they work, and then you understand that, right? So basically, there's a limited pot of money that the banks have that they can lend out to people with a deposit that's less than 20%. There's a limited pot of that money, okay? So when they lend it out, they make you jump over a reasonably high bar before they'll give you any of it, right? And in particular, they are favouring their own customers. So you've got to, if you're a Westpac customer, you can only access the Westpac pool of that low deposit money, and then you've got to jump over some hurdles to get it. So it's tough. It's doable, but it's tough. And actually, in recent weeks, that the door to that pool has shut in some cases. So even if you are an existing customer, you can't get it. However, there's a couple of exemptions, and people need to know about these exemptions, right? The first one is for brand new property. The hurdle doesn't exist if you're looking to buy a brand spanking new property. You can get there with less than 20% deposit. Okay, so tick. There's another path as well. The first that one is to get a first home loan. This is the product offered via Kainga Ora. You can actually maybe do that with a 5% deposit. So really tiny, right? But that product doesn't really work too well in Auckland anyway, because the price, the income cap just kind of, it knocks people out too much. So a key tip from me actually is if you're a couple, then I think you should bank at different places, because that gives you access to 2 different pots. And if the door's shut on one, it might be open on the other. And, that gives you a way through. But man, tough in that world.
Let's talk about saving your deposit. I wouldn't have thought there was much limitations as to, but there's a story behind that, right? Does it matter how you save your deposit?
Yeah, it does. I mean, people say to me, "Oh, Campbell, I've got some money in the bank. There it is. Is that good enough?" Well, it's fantastic to have that lump of coin sitting there. Of course it is. But how you got there is really important, actually, because when you think about how a loan works, it's all about having to make consistent repayments over a long period of time, and obviously never miss any of those payments. And the question you got to ask yourself, or the question that the bank is looking to answer, is how do you show that kind of behavior that you're good for it when you have never had a loan before? Well, the answer is by making regular contributions to your savings and your KiwiSaver and watching that fund slowly increase, because that's exactly the same kind of behavior that's required to make loan payments in the future. So, it stands to reason if you're doing that now, you'll be able to do the other and ongoing, right? So, I guess the other key thing here is it's not all about savings. There's something else to think about here as well, and that is, are you demonstrating that you've got the capacity to make mortgage payments? So that's a combination of savings and rent, because we know that's going to turn into a mortgage payment at the end of the day, right? So if you're doing that consistently and those two things together add up to the same amount as what your proposed mortgage payments are or going to be, then the bank goes, hey, you're doing it. Fantastic. Okay. So yeah, it actually does matter how you save your deposit, how you go about it. It's really important. It's about that behavior, and are you demonstrating good behavior,
And so let's say, for example, that you've missed a rent payment, or you haven't been contributing to your KiwiSaver or whatever that might be, and so that behavior isn't there. Will the bank still say no?
No, no, they won't necessarily say no, because it's not just about, the deposit itself, saving the deposit and how you do that is part of a bigger picture. It's not the only thing, right? So, people go overseas and so they stop paying their KiwiSaver and their student loans too, some of them. Some gaps is okay. But really, in a perfect world, we would see no gaps. We would see a beautiful, boring, consistent record.
And consistently going to KFC as I did there. I went yesterday and went to use those silly touch screens, and they don't work. And I went, okay, it's time to leave. I literally, I was almost at the front of the queue, and I went, okay, no, I'm going to say no to my KFC. I am saving for my deposit. What about Campbell selling things to? Will that add to your deposit if you
like putting all your stuff on Trade Me, getting rid of it and turning it into cash, sticking the cash in the bank? Will that help? Yes, it will. Yes, it absolutely will. It doesn't have the same characteristics as we were talking about before, because it's not saved up over time. You've just gone and flogged off a whole lot of stuff. So it doesn't have that consistent behavior. One thing that the banks talk about, and I'll throw a bit of jargon in here, and the jargon is, it's just left my mind, genuine deposit, genuine savings, right? Genuine savings. What is genuine savings? Broadly speaking, it's defined as money that is sitting in your account in your name for at least 3 months, right? So if you go and sell a whole lot of stuff and then boomfa, you've got another 10 grand of cash sitting in your bank account, that's fine. But the bank wants to see that you've held on to it over a period of time, so that you actually saved it. You haven't gone, ooh, and then taken it out. A lot of people say to me, oh, Cam, I've got a savings account. And they do. They put money, and I put $400 a month into it. Oh, great, cool. But they take 300 out. So they're not actually saving $400 a month. It's only 100. So they're not doing as well as they think they are. Again, it's the behavior. It's the behavior that really counts. Yeah. And this is why we get people's bank statements. It's not just to see what the balance is, like a big, hairy balance is fantastic. But it's actually about the pattern of spending. And I was sort of moving away from the deposit question itself, but it adds to the overall picture. Because remember, I think you and I have discussed this before, lending is a confidence game. It's all about demonstrating to a complete stranger that you're good for that $500,000 that you're asking them to give you. It's a really big favor. So how do you convince them? Well, you demonstrate that you can pay them back consistently without fail. And so, again, being able to contribute to your savings account in that way is a big fat tick in a really important box.
Past behavior dictates future. I think that's the biggest takeaway that I've had in the last couple of months, and I'm absolutely stuffed.
When you're talking about investments and people who are spruiking an investment say, the returns on this are 10% or whatever it might be, 8% net. And then they go, that return is, future returns are not guaranteed. We don't look at, don't take the past into account. Well, actually, from a lending perspective, we totally take the past into account, because how else are you going to show you're good for it?
But how far do you go back? And I know that you generally get statements of 6 months that I've learned in the last few months.
Yeah.
If you, so you've got to demonstrate a good behavior for at least a couple of years, really.
It's not actually quite that long. The banks want to see 3 months of your transactional banking history. 6 is better, though. I think of it like this. 2 points is, you can't get an average out of 2 points. Once you've got 3, then you can. And so the further back you look, the better. So, to your 2-year thing, sure, if we can see beautiful behavior for 2 years, that's just fantastic. But that's probably, no one wants to look back that far anyway. It's too much work. But, 6 months, that's how far I look back in your, in your bank statements and your transaction history. 6 months. We can get a really good handle on what you're doing in all areas of your financial life. If we look back that far, 3 months doesn't, you can miss things. Some things come on and then they drop off. Whereas over 6 months, you'll see if those drop offs are genuine or mistakes or whatever. So 6 months, mate. Just to add to that, if you're a self-employed person, 2 years, and this might be where you got it from, 2 years is what you want to see in terms of income history, right? And trading history. Is your income consistent? That's an income thing, not a deposit or savings thing.
Can I go back to my mother and father? Let's talk about mum and dad deposits. Can they give me the deposit?
Yeah, they can. Not everybody's got a parent who's flush, and able to write out a sort of a meaningful sized check. But they can. And for parents who are watching, there's 2 ways that you can do this. You can do it as a straight out, 3 ways, in fact, that you can do this. Number 1 is a straight out gift that you just hand over a check for, X amount, and there's no strings. That's a gift. A loan, albeit an interest-free one, maybe repayable on sale of the property. That's the other way to do it. And out of those 2, the loan is my preferred option. That would be what I recommend to most parents. And the reason for that is because it has recourse. You can get it back. There's an acknowledgement there, a written piece of paper that says, we will pay this back to you. Don't have to pay any interest maybe, but we will pay it back to you. A gift, there's no strings, so you can't get it back. The third way is by allowing children to use the equity in mum and dad's property, and mum and dad support that by way of a guarantee. That's a different kettle of fish from the other 2. Mum and dad have to go through a loan assessment if they're wanting to go down that path. There's a bit more risk involved because their property will be on the line as well. So all of them require a bit of legal advice, in my view. But, we can talk to people about which option suits best, which option to avoid, what are the basic risks involved. We can work people through that. But, mum and dad providing some sort of assistance. I think there was a stat put out not so long ago that said the bank of mum and dad are lending more money than Kiwi Bank or something like that. It's a huge, huge amount of assistance. So it's a real thing, and it does happen.
And what makes up your deposit?
Fantastic question. So it can be made up of a whole lot of different things. You can piece it together in lots of different ways. For most people, KiwiSaver and their own savings make up the bulk of one's deposit these days. And millennials particularly, I hate to say it like this, but that group don't know how lucky they are to have KiwiSaver in their lives because they don't think it's anything new. You just get a job and sign up to it and away you go. And then a few years later, there's a deposit for a house sitting there. My generation, God, I feel so old saying that. I know. I'm an X. I'm at the front end of the X. This was new. We had to do it the old way, the old-fashioned way, which is just straight out savings. But now there's KiwiSaver to be added into the mix. So those two things count. There's a first home grant that people might be eligible for. And there's some caps that are involved with that. Kāinga Ora are the entity that administer that scheme. Basically, it's $1,000 a year for every year you've been involved with KiwiSaver if you're looking to buy an existing house, and it doubles if you're looking to buy a brand new house. As I say, there's some price caps on that. You can get a maximum of so it applies for a maximum of 5 years there. So existing house $5,000 potentially, brand new house $10,000, and if there's two of you, double it. So that's pretty cool. A gift from the folks, we talked about that before. You can throw that into the mix as well. The guarantee thing, maybe as well. Like, it all adds up. But if I'm completely honest, the thing that I like to see is a simple. Your deposit is being composed simply. It's not complicated. It's not bitsy, I suppose. A bitsy deposit doesn't look as good as a nice chunky one that's just come from a couple of places. Like, it just doesn't. You think about when you go to a restaurant and they say, oh, well, that'll be $53, thanks, for the lunch or whatever. And you pull out a couple of notes and a handful of coins, and the guy on the counter just goes, are you kidding me? Oh, I suppose you want to split the bill now. You know what I mean? It's like that. Yeah. Nice and chunky. Keep it simple. Keep it even.
Keep it simple. All right.
Yeah.
That is all the questions I have for you. Anything more you want to add? Anyone who is sitting there, well, I've got something for you. If you want to have a conversation about having a chunky, not a itsy bitsy deposit put together, have a conversation with Campbell Hastie of Hastie Mortgages. You can go to his website, and there is a mortgage calculator there as well. You can punch some numbers and see how much you can borrow. It's a tool that he has on his website. But he loves having conversations, and he loves having conversations, especially when he says yes. Isn't that right?
Yes, it is. We like to have a few more of those. So yeah, feel free to get in touch. Love to have a conversation with you. And for most people, we're preparing them. We're saying, okay, this is where you're at now. And most people can't go straight away. There's a little bit of prep work that needs to be done. It's all about that consistency we were talking about before. So we say, look, do these things. And in most cases, it doesn't take all that long. And then come back to us. And so the conversations I'm looking to have with people now are for those who are programming to purchase in 2023, in 6 months' time. They're looking to purchase in 6 months' time. It often takes that long to get prepped up and really looking beautiful from the bank's perspective. So, yep, happy to talk to those good
Last
folk.
question for you. Last question. Last month, we talked about the interest rates and have they peaked yet? You sent me a statistic after we went live, and one of the lesser banks, had dropped their fixed term 2, 3, 4, 5 year loan. Anyway, any more of an update on that particularly? Do you think that we've reached our peak, or do you think they'll go again? Oh, no. Open the can of worms.
Okay. We have opened the can of worms. No, look, I'll answer that question. It's a direct question, so I'll answer it directly. I think we have peaked, actually. I think what happened a couple of months ago now is that interest rates went into that 6% zone, and of late we've seen them pull back. So I think that was actually an overshoot, and they've settled back into a more sustainable position. People are wondering if they'll continue to drop. Maybe. I don't think so. I think they'll sit where they are right now for a little while. It might be another 12, 18 months. The reason I say that they will remain roughly where they are is because interest rates, people who've got mortgages now have their fixed interest rates going from sort of 2.5% to 5.5%. The balance of those people in New Zealand who haven't had a fixed interest rate expiry are going to have one over the next 6 months between now and Christmas 22. And what that means is that there's a whole lot of income that's going to get sucked out of their pocket because they have to pay it in interest. It means they won't be able to spend on other things. It means inflation will not increase to the extent that perhaps some people are saying, and it means that the interest rate that the Reserve Bank has to impose won't have to be as hard. I think we're going to see that, and I think we've seen that pullback already. We won't actually know until we're about 6 months past it because these things reveal themselves in the rearview mirror. There you go. I think we've peaked. Yep.
I love it, the statement. Campbell, Hastie, always a pleasure. We shall talk to you next month, and you have a great rest of your week.